right, welcome to Season 2, Episode 9 of the Retro Game Club podcast. And partying hard for this Mario Day is Hugh.
Yes, I've been eating mushrooms all day. Or is it taking mushrooms, which is the right term?
Whatever gives you flower power.
Yeah, then I think it's taking.
What have you been up to?
I've been messing around with Steam a bunch lately. So I have a whole lot of like DOS games over the years I've purchased on Steam, like as part of a bundle or something.
Mm-hmm.
You probably have 100 of those too. Yeah.
Yes.
And I could never get them to run. Now, so Steam has a thing called Proton, which is like their wrapper for wine.
Yeah.
And the kind of annoying thing is like, whatever way they install that, if you try and install a newer version of Wine, it doesn't work because it like runs into a conflict with the version Steam installed. So I just did like a massive update. I figured out that you can actually update the version of Proton Steam is using and got it up to the latest and greatest version. And now suddenly like every Windows and DOS game I purchased works.
Interesting. So what kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, I buy a lot of these bundles where it's like, here's some East games on sale, or Seventh Guest, or some of the GTA games. Pretty much everything worked. The thing that doesn't work is that games that have AVI intros still don't play. If you kind of hit the enter key like 100 times, whatever the threshold is to skip the intro in the game, then the game plays fine. But it seems to be, and I know it's AVI because I went and looked at the game files, and it seems to be AVI playback specifically that doesn't work. Maybe, is AVI like a Microsoft proprietary format?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's probably like some goofy reason.
Yeah, Yeah, it's weird. All my DOS stuff, I mean, I use Microsoft, so all my DOS stuff in Steam works great, but my mid-2000s Windows stuff, like stuff for Windows XP, just doesn't work.
Okay. Yeah, so that all works.
Like Check Ryan Radio and stuff like that.
Okay. I'll have to try those. I mean, I have a pretty decent-sized Steam library that I was trying here. Let me see. Hold on. I gotta find out where Steam installs games, because if I open Steam, then I'll be running too much stuff on my computer probably, or something. Something bad will happen. Every time I start Steam, usually something bad happens, because it's like, oh hey, there's this 200 meg update you have to run right now. Even though I ran one literally yesterday. So, so some GTA games, the Shadowrun Returns game, which might have been a Lynx game to begin with, so maybe that doesn't count. Seventh Guest, yeah. So basically the stuff I mentioned, and I have a bunch of other things I just haven't, like Her Story, which is fairly recent that I haven't tried yet.
Yeah, I've been meaning to check that one out.
So that's good. That's been about it. I did get the email. Midwest Gaming Classic just sent out an email like within the past hour, where they basically have said they're not canceling the show, but if you decide you don't want to go, you can use your pre-sale ticket next year.
Oh, that's cool of them. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a reasonable trade-off. Because some people might, maybe are worried about getting sick. The thing that's silly for me is like, this is an event that's already being held during flu season.
Yeah.
Right? So if you've been going for years, you're already going to an event with lots of people touching controllers and arcade sticks and and doorknobs and that kind of stuff. Like, you've already been going to that event for years during flu season. So whatever precautions you were taking to not get flu, you would just do the same.
Exactly, yes.
Which would include, if you're sick, don't show up. And this ticket policy that they just sent the email out about, I sort of read it as, if you're sick, don't show up.
Yeah, you're not losing money if you don't show up. Yeah.
Right. Don't feel like you're going to lose your $50 or whatever. Just don't show up. I encourage everybody not to show up if you're sick.
Yes.
But if they have poor attendance and you're there, buy some extra merchandise. That's what I would say. Yeah. Buy a few extra things.
Yeah, maybe I'll actually get there this year. Maybe there won't be a blizzard.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a blizzard, but it sure looks like there's going to be other problems.
I always buy a ticket regardless.
Yeah. Well, you're actually their ideal customer then.
I know. I think I'm a lot of people's ideal customer, which is not good for me.
Yeah, except you can use the ticket now for some future year when you do show up. All right. So what have you been up to?
I've had to travel for work and the past week, and I was a little bit under the weather while traveling. Nothing like that's in the news. Just normal cold type stuff. And so it's never fun when that happens when you're traveling and you have to talk to people and have to go to work. And they don't really appreciate it either. But worst of all, I forgot my Switch and my Vita and pretty much any gaming system. So not an ideal trip. I pretty much spent, my free time with my tablet locked in a room. Anytime I could heal up. And I booked my trip last minute, and the Marriott I needed to stay at was booked up. The one in Lombard at Yorktown.
Yeah, I know Yorktown.
And well, I thought there was an overflow place to stay that was Marriott, so I just booked there. I know it's like one of those long-term hotels, and it got pretty interesting there at night.
The extended stay.
It just like a lot of people just hanging out outside and stuff. I don't know. It was strange, but yeah.
I've only stayed at one extended stay hotel. Maybe that's not true. I can only think of one time in recent history when I stayed at one, and it was again because of an overflow situation. Like I was supposed to stay somewhere else, but it was full. And that extended stay hotel was definitely one of the worst hotels I've ever stayed in. I won't name the chain because I didn't want to besmirch them.
This was not great.
It was not clean. That was the big problem. I had to look under the bed, if you know what I'm saying, just to make sure.
Yes. Well, this is how bad mine was. And don't get me wrong, I already said it's Marriott. I almost always stay at Marriott because they're usually fine. The TV didn't work. And it was like not new, but it was like a flat screen and all that stuff. But it didn't work. But I had my tablet and I was just like, you know what? I just don't want to deal with this. So I just it was, not the best trip. But other than that, taking a break from finishing up, the nitty gritty stuff in my basement and actually trying to play games while I'm here and actually spend some time with my family and celebrating Mario Day like the rest of us.
Yeah. When did that tradition start?
It must have been like 10 years ago, I want to say. I think it was a Think Geek thing.
Okay. And they're gone now.
Yeah, I think GameStop bought them.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Yeah, now they're just like part of GameStop or whatever.
Speaking of GameStop, this did not make our news, but something to note. Reggie from Nintendo is now on the board of GameStop.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he will get a nice payday to watch that chain go out of business.
Yes. That's kind of the same thing I thought. Like, what is he going to do to save them?
Yes. I wish I could get on the board of a failing company because I'm sure the pay is great.
But yeah, that's about it. Should we dive into the episode?
Yeah. So, I'm sure everyone saw this in the past week. TurboGrafx 16 Mini indefinitely delayed due to coronavirus. I guess that means when your TurboGrafx Mini does arrive, when you open the box, you shouldn't just like breathe in the air, right?
You should Lysol it right
away. So they don't know. I guess it'll be back. They'll figure it out. But with a lot of factories shutting down, I guess they're just impacting. And of course, supply chain issues too.
Yeah, I wonder when this is going to start affecting other things like Intel and AMD shipments. The new Xbox, new PlayStation.
Yeah,
is supposed to come out this year.
I mean, luckily, this is all stuff that is not essential.
Exactly. Yeah. And to tell you the truth, like, I ordered one of these, but if it came out in March, I don't know when I would have time to play it anyway. Like, this might help my timing out with this thing for me.
Yeah, I would find a time to play it for sure. But it would not be, to your point, I would not have like a ton of time to play it.
Yeah, so At least they're letting their employees stay home or whatever they're doing. But yeah, I think this next article is yours too.
It could be, yeah. Oh, yeah, sad news. Designer Tim Skelly, who developed a number of Cinematronics games, unfortunately passed away in the past week. Wasn't very old, 1951 to 2020, the article says here. Started working in Cinematronics in 1978 and worked on a number of really innovative arcade games.
Starhawk, Sundance, War of the Worlds.
Yeah, it was, and Reactor.
Yeah. Yeah, which there is a video of in this article.
I want to say that was a Starcade game also. Maybe I'm watching too much Starcade. So yeah, sad news. Unfortunate to read that.
Yeah. So this next article is mine, and this website blows my mind. So this website is flooh.github.io. You could find it, in our show notes, but if you just Google Visual 6502 Remix, it is this website that has an interactive schematic of the 6502 chip. Plus, you could put stuff in its memory and hit play and rewind and actually see what the 6502 processor does. And you can hover over each connection in the schematic and see where it's connected to. Like, it highlights it. And this is crazy. This thing is awesome.
Yeah, I maybe have seen this before. I don't recall now. But then, yeah, you can also you can write little assembler programs and run them.
And see exactly what's happening in the processor. You could zoom in really, really close. Seriously, I hope all of our listeners go to this site, because this just reminds me how not smart I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you finally get into 6502 assembly, that's your site.
Yeah, I just might. I don't know.
And some fun news here at sonicstadium.org. Sonic hacking contest is coming this October. So I guess this usually launches in the summer, and they pushed it back because they thought they would get more entries. But it's called Sonic Hacking Contest 2020. So it's a contest for you to make patches and mods to Sonic.
For any Sonic game or just the original?
Let's see. I have the uploads. I have the other website it links to open, and let's see. It does not say. Contest rules. Okay, let me see. Your entry must be based on an existing ROM or game tied to the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise.
All right.
Homebrew submissions are not accepted. An example of something that won't be accepted is a hack of Super Mario 64 converting it into a Sonic game. A custom engine with an imported Sonic assets. That will not be accepted.
Okay.
What will be accepted is a hack of a Sonic game turning it into a non-Sonic game, or a hack of a Sonic game introducing new features or content into the game.
Okay, that makes sense. So any Sonic game, the base has to be any Sonic game. Sonic Spinball, Sonic 2, Sonic's Fun with Numbers, whatever.
Yes.
That's not a game.
What do you think you would, if you were going to do this, what do you think you would do?
I would probably take, was it Tails Music Maker for Sega Pico, and recompile it to run on the Genesis.
With the Sonic engine?
Yes.
Yes.
No, just so you could play it without the book.
Oh.
Because the Pico, the book was the controller. So there was a game called, it says Tails Music Maker, something like that. And then something called Sonic's Game World that is like a collection of mini games. And I think Pico games are just, are 68,000. I think it's the same CPU as the Genesis, essentially. So I bet you could recompile these to work with a regular controller instead of the touch book interface.
And so what is it with the pages?
Well, so the Pico, it's like you can visualize the Pico.
I'm Googling it right now. It's been a long time.
So there's pages. So basically behind the Pico, the interface for the Pico is essentially a big touchpad. All right. Mm-hmm. And then there's a book. And as you flip the pages of the book, that triggers something in the ROM to, advance the game to whatever's going on that page. Mm-hmm. And then where you touch on the page, it's not really the page you're touching, right? It's the touch screen behind the page that's really triggering stuff. But each page has, pictures at certain points. So if you touch Sonic or whatever, that does something on the page, based on whatever page you're on. And then it has kind of a controller on it. And there actually were some games. We don't really talk about Pico much. I don't think anyone talks about Sega Pico much. What's on Sega Pico podcast?
A game by game?
No, there's not one. Retronauts did one episode on it. Something called the Sega Retrospective, which might be an episode of a podcast. So, yeah, not a lot of love for the Sega Pico. I have I think I'm one game short of a complete collection of Pico games.
Wow.
Most of them I
totally
got.
Deleted
most of them I got at one
brain.
time.
Oh, you didn't hunt them all down.
No, there was basically one summer where I picked up 2 Sega Picos back-to-back weekends at garage sales. In between the 2 of them, I got almost every single game.
Wow.
And then I decided to, at Midwest Gaming Classic, fill out the last 1 or 2 games I didn't have, because at the time they were cheap. Maybe they cost more now. Maybe people have realized these things are super collectible. Now, of course, I'm just talking about the US releases. Japan, there's a ton of games for this thing. Ton. I don't know if the system's region locked or not. So I've never really looked at collecting Japanese Pico games. I don't know why anyone would want to. I guess I collect all kinds of weird stuff, so I guess I understand why someone would want to. But yeah, there's the U.S. catalog is pretty small. So, and most of them are licensed games. Disney, a lot of Disney licensed stuff. Obviously Sega stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Disney kind of went all in on this system. There's Pocahontas. What's their Little Mermaid? There's definitely a lot of Mickey games. There's several Mickey Mouse games. And yeah, it's just a Genesis with a weird control scheme.
Yeah, I totally deleted this thing from my brain.
Yeah, the specs right here. It's Motorola 68,000, 64K of RAM, 64K of video RAM. It has the sound. It doesn't have the exact same sound hardware, but it has half of the same sound hardware and a different video chip. So you could probably port Pico games to the Genesis, but some of the the calls to calls to write tiles and draw graphics and palettes, that kind of stuff probably are a little bit different. Mm-hmm. But I suspect for the ease of development, they made this a lot like a Genesis.
Wow. Yeah. What a strange system.
Yeah. All right. So the Sega Pico. I can
yes.
tell you all about it, man. There's actually, like I said, there's actually a few there are a few really good games on there.
If you have a Sega Pico project out there, please email us. Email at retrogameclub.net.
Yeah.
We got a few anniversaries here.
Yeah, the zip drives turned 25, I guess.
Yeah, which, it's our logo, so it's kind of cool. I was a huge zip drive fan, but I've said it 100 times on this podcast that it was because of the Mr. Backup for Nintendo 64. Yeah,
see, I had it before. I did not use it for that. I obviously copied a lot of stuff onto it. But for me, it was just about having more hard drive space.
Yeah, they were very convenient. I actually had the internal one, the IDE version.
Okay.
It was just a strange one.
Yeah, I had the very first one, the external one that they show here. And that's not USB, remember. There was no USB yet.
It was Parallel or SCSI, the first one, right?
Yeah, I had a parallel port one. So you could either use the zip drive or your printer.
Yes, and it had a through on it for your printer.
Yeah, I guess it probably did. I don't think I owned a printer back then. So it was, it was 100 meg cartridges or discs, whatever you want to call them. That was a lot back then, man. That was a really good deal back then.
I thought zip drives were going to be around forever, but then I also thought mini discs were going to be around forever.
Mm-hmm.
So,
did you have the mini disc player in your car? Were you one of those guys?
I definitely was, and I had a portable one I took with me everywhere.
Did you have a caddy for the mini disc player?
What do you mean?
You had to use a caddy, right? You couldn't just put the disc in. You had to have like if you wanted to change discs, you had to put them in a caddy or something, right?
No. You just put them in there.
Okay.
But yeah, kind of missed the zip disc. And our other anniversary, PlayStation 2 is 20.
Yeah. PlayStation 2 seems more than 5 years younger than the zip drive.
It really does. I mean, I still remember I was living in Sydney when it came out, so I got to see it before it was in North America, and I just happened to walk into a store and they had one on display where you could play. God, it must have been Taken. Was Taken a launch game for it? Well, anyway, it was a game like that, and I just couldn't believe how good it looked.
Yeah, I was kind of a holdout on buying a PlayStation 2. It was I had such a backlog from not playing a lot of games for a few years. Like I was so backlogged on like Nintendo 64 and PlayStation 1 and Dreamcast games that I waited quite a while to get a PlayStation 2. I mean, I like it. I obviously played a ton of PlayStation 2 games.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what a great catalog, and
yeah, I'm kind of looking at my collection right now.
If you needed a DVD player, you just bought a PS2. That's pretty much how they won. And I got mine pretty late, but a lot of my friends had it, and I got mine on eBay for dirt cheap. I'm doing air quotes because it was broken, and I opened it up and cleaned the laser. I didn't replace anything. I cleaned the laser, and it worked perfect for years. In fact, I still have the same one.
So yeah, my original PlayStation 2 broke at some point, the big black one, and I replaced it with one of those silver slim ones, and that thing works great. And they even kind of improved the controllers too. I was pretty impressed with it. And yeah, a lot of good games. I mean, just stuff like obviously, like people talk about Grand Theft Auto and Bully. Those are probably like those, I guess, the big ones for me. That's why I played, probably the most on those systems. But also stuff like, you got E6 on there. That was kind of cool. I don't know. What did you play on the PlayStation 2?
Yeah, the Grand Theft Autos. I'm trying to think back. Rez was Rez was awesome on the PlayStation 2. Taken. Jeez, I'm trying to think of the other ones that I had.
I had like a really obvious one I forgot to mention. Well, obviously, like some of these I played on GameCube around the same time. But Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy X2. Two of my favorite installments in the series.
Yeah. God, I'm looking through PlayStation 2 games now. Oh, Okami, of course.
Oh yeah,
a classic. I did not play God of War until PlayStation 3. Yeah, Ratchet and Clank. Of course, Guitar Hero.
Yeah. Oh, I've never played Guitar Hero. But possibly the best games on the whole console. Katamari Damacy and We Heart Katamari. Which I still play often.
Love that series, yes. I wouldn't mind doing an entire show on the Katamari series. I love that game.
All like 4 games.
Yeah, I mean, even the Vita one, that's a good game.
Vita one is pretty short.
Yeah, but I just wanted another. I wanted more Katamari in it. That's what it was, you know. Katamari in the Switch, not bad. Pretty good port.
That's true. I bought that for one of my kids because she really wanted it. She played the PlayStation 2 one. And I borrowed it from her at some point, and yeah, it is really good. And that is like some weird GameStop exclusive. Don't buy that one on Amazon. It's like $10 more on Amazon because it's aftermarket people selling it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my Katamari pro tip. To do more news. Let's get through. Sorry about that. We're stalling because we don't have a ton of news. Or a long topic. Which Super Mario character are you based on your Zodiac type? Because Zodiac type is totally a thing that's reliable.
Yes. Well, I am Cancer, so I am Princess Peach.
And then I am Birdo. So, there you go. That was something. The Pit,
Yes.
1982 arcade game, gets a Z or ZX Spectrum conversion release.
Yeah, I'm looking at this video now. It looks like a ZX Spectrum game.
It does. They all have that same color palette. I mean, I know I say that all the
Yeah.
time, but there's that very distinct, color palette. And this is a kind of Boulder Dash knockoff game.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of Boulder
Yeah.
Dash, maybe a little bit of Dig Dug kind of feel to it. Looks all right.
Yeah, this is on indieretronews.com, which it wouldn't be a Retro Game Club episode if we didn't have a link to this site.
That is true.
And that is the short news we got this week.
Yeah.
But, yeah. You know, the past many episodes, we had so many news items that we had to save them. It's kind of nice to have a little normal list instead of a crazy list.
Yes. So what did you want to talk about this episode?
Let's talk about Nintendo 64 games that are cheap to import and you don't really need to know Japanese to play them.
Yes. Now, I noticed that our list, we took different spins on this.
Yes.
You seem to have focused on Japanese exclusive Nintendo 64 games. And I'm going with, I took it a different way and said Nintendo 64 games that are way cheaper in Japan than the US.
Yeah, I think, when we came up with this topic, we were trading emails. I was on a lot of Dayquil and traveling. So, might be my fault for not reading emails correctly.
No, we didn't. We actually didn't talk about it. I think we just agreed Nintendo 64 import games you can play without knowing Japanese. And then we both interpreted that broad thing differently.
Well, I got mine up there first, so I guess I'll go. So, and also, everyone could take a drink because I'm going to mention this game, but Bangai-O. I can't pronounce the whole thing very well. Bakuretsu Muteki Bangai-O. It is not cheap, but it's absolutely, by far, by a mile, my favorite Nintendo 64 game. If you haven't played it, is it Treasure that makes this game? I'm pretty sure. But I'll look that up in a minute. But here's how it's described as. A side-scrolling mech shooter. It's your job to take down the Cosmo Gang, villains whose most egregious crime is the contraband of fruit. And so you're flying in this sideways shooter, and it's almost like a dual stick, but you use the 4 yellow arrow buttons as the other stick. And oh no, you could use use the D-pad and the analog stick. I was thinking of the Dreamcast version of this. And you're just flying in this strange setting, shooting houses and robots. It is a lot of fun. And it has more sprites than I've seen in any other Nintendo 64 game. The problem is it's $140 on eBay. Have you played Bangai-O at all?
I have not.
I highly recommend it. You could get it on DS for really cheap. It's I think the only sequel, and it's one of the few games on Dreamcast that cannot use the VGA port. But highly recommend this game. That's the only one I'll talk a lot about. The other ones I wrote down here, Puyo Puyo Sun and Puyo Puyo Party 4 Puyon. Um, that's like a bust a move type game, and it's only about $30. I have played these in Japanese, and you don't need to know Japanese at all. Uh, Rakugakids. It's a fighting game that looks like Parappa the Rapper graphics.
Okay.
It's kind of silly, Rakugakids. Definitely, check out a YouTube video of it. See if it's up your alley. You could get that one for pretty cheap too. And those are the ones I came up with. What do you got?
So I was actually looking at games again that were simply cheaper to get the Nintendo 64 version, or at least cheaper to get like a boxed and complete version. And I don't know about you, but I think Nintendo 64 boxes look way better in Japan than in America.
I don't think I ever paid attention. But I'm gonna have to. I'm searching now.
I will search in 1 second when Chrome decides to unfreeze. Yeah, hold on. Wait, here we go. It's unfrozen. Hooray. I don't know what I did.
Oh, yeah, now I see.
Yeah. So, like, here, just an example. Like, so, like, the first Nintendo 64 game I ever imported was Diddy Kong Racing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look, like, the US version of Diddy Kong Racing is usually loose for, like, $20 and complete for, 30 or 40. And the Japanese version is about $2 to $5 loose. Right now I see someone asking 1 cent for it. And boxed, usually under 20. And really the box looks a lot better.
Yeah. Gosh, I never noticed that before.
Yeah, it's just like they have real artwork, and the boxes like look cool, and they don't all kind of have that same awful yellow tint to them.
Yes. Well, also on eBay here, you could get Super Smash Brothers and Diddy Kong Racing imported for buy it now $25.
Oh, I did
$3
not
shipping.
So I forgot to mention Smash Brothers. Yeah, Smash Brothers is like a $60 game in the US, right?
Yeah, and you could just get it, with a stack of games from Japan.
Yeah.
And again, you don't need to know Japanese to play Smash Brothers.
I assume you don't. No, I'm not the world's biggest Smash Brothers fan, but I will agree with it. Yeah, so like side by side, US Smash Brothers, $3,195 for a complete in box pristine copy versus $72.79 for the Japanese one with its like comic book panel box art.
That's crazy.
That looks so much better. Yeah, someone is actually selling one for $3.25 with $6 shipping, but the seller has really terrible feedback, so maybe you pass on that one.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. Yoshi Story is another one that is pretty consistently less than half price in Japan.
Now, I guess there isn't much text in that, huh? Even though the word story is in the title.
Yeah, I don't remember it being a text-heavy game. Am I wrong?
No, I don't think so. And you could get it with Bomberman 64, Mario Party, and Super Mario 64 from Japan for $29 and no shipping.
Yes.
That's just an awesome deal.
And I was just double checking this. There is indeed no text. I don't know why they have story in the name. There's no games with text for the Nintendo 64, except for Paper Mario.
Yeah, so that was the one I was going to say, yeah.
Another one with really great box art, Donkey Kong 64.
Let me look up this one.
So Donkey Kong 64 is not a super expensive US game. Like, I'll give you that much. It is definitely cheaper in Japan and has more of a kind of jungle themed box, for lack of a better term.
Why didn't Nintendo put labels on the top of Nintendo 64 games? What were they thinking?
They want you to save the box?
I guess. No kid's gonna do that.
They want to save a nickel on packaging. I don't know.
That's about it. Yeah.
And then my last two recommendations, these should be pretty obvious. Mario Kart 64 and Kirby 64. Both very, very cheap to import.
Kirby 64 would be a great game club game soon. It's been a long, long time since I played that one.
Yeah, so Kobe Bryant game is probably cheaper in Japan too, but it's dirt cheap in America. What was the one he was on? It was the NBA. I was saying NBA game. Wasn't NBA Live?
I was going to say Live.
I don't think it was Live. I think it was back where there was more than one NBA branded game. But that being a sports game, it's dirt cheap, even if the person on the title is no longer with us.
You could get Kirby 64 and Donkey Kong 64. 99 cents, no bids yet. I'm sure that'll go up, but still.
Yeah, I'm looking at a boxed Kirby 64 and something called Tamagotchi World, also boxed for $19.99.
Oh, this is dangerous. This makes me want to spend money that I shouldn't be spending.
Yeah, this is the problem once you go down that Nintendo 64 import rabbit hole, because you will get sucked in by, like, for me, it's the box art. I know I keep going back to it, but it is just, like, this is the kind of thing, if you like having, if you like displaying games that you actually like, if that makes sense, as opposed to just playing, like, here's a game that's cool and it has a good box, so, like, not Mega Man, right? You're like, oh, look at this cool Kirby game. Like, it's just an awesome looking box compared to the US version, which is it Kirby, is it GoldenEye? Who knows?
Oh, man. And it's funny we have this topic this week because we've been kind of dunking on Nintendo 64 lately, and it does deserve some credit.
Yeah, now Paper Mario you won't be able to play, of course, but it has way better box. That's another one. Awesome looking box art. If you, for whatever reason, just want to collect Nintendo 64 box art.
You could get one sealed for $600.
Not interested. I understand there is a Bomberman game that is a Japanese exclusive as well. Is that a correct statement?
Oh, well, Bomberman 64 did come out here.
Yeah, is it maybe Bomberman 64 2 or something? There's like a second Bomber. There's some other Bomberman game.
Oh, Bomberman Hero.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, so a game you couldn't even get here.
And that one costs a little bit more because people know that's an exclusive game. In terms of playing import Nintendo 64 games, what is your recommendation?
Oof. I didn't even think that far. Because I used the Mr. Backup.
The Mr. Backup. So what I use, I guess I should grab one of mine off the shelf, is the Gameshark. So the only difference between the Japanese and US Nintendo 64 is the cartridge shape. It's the same kind of region lock they did on the Super Nintendo that can be defeated with a Dremel. But if you don't want to open up your Nintendo 64, you can get a Gameshark, because the Gameshark, you plug it into the Nintendo 64, but the top part is just open. Like, you can stick either Japanese or it's not form-fitted to either the Japanese or American cartridge. So you can just plug the Japanese cartridge into the Gameshark. You don't have to use any cheat codes. Just pass through and play it like normal. And it gives you that Sega Genesis, like, Tower of Power look, too.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, please don't Dremel your Nintendo 64.
Yeah, I have a spare Nintendo 64 that I was actually thinking of Dremeling, but then I said, why would I do that when I have this much easier solution? I have two Gamesharks. I mean, I find Nintendo 64 Gamesharks everywhere.
It's just I really think it's one of the best looking systems. But to recap, Bangai-O, the Puyo Puyo series, Rakugakids. I'm probably pronouncing that so wrong. Someone's cringing. And Diddy Kong Racing, Yoshi Story, Donkey Kong 64, Mario 64, Kirby 64. And yeah, if you've imported Nintendo 64 games or if you have any recommendations, email at retrogameclub.net. Please.
Yeah.
All right. Any closing thoughts on Japanese Nintendo 64 games?
No, I mean, the other recommendation, of course, is you can buy a Japanese Nintendo 64. That's always an option, although then you have to worry about whether or not the hardware works and that kind of stuff.
Would that work on could you just use an American power supply for it?
Yeah, I believe so.
Because it's like the whole power supply that plugs into it, so that must work.
I've never, I should have done a little bit of research. I've never heard of that being a problem.
Why do research when our listeners can email
Can you
us?
listen and explain
Tell us.
how wrong we were? I thought you could just use it like no problem. I didn't think you needed any special converters.
It might be there are some power adapters that do the 110 and 220. So who knows? Hopefully, our listeners.
Yeah, just get a game. Go to Goodwill, buy a cheap Nintendo 64 in a Dremel. Is the other option. Get a sacrificial Nintendo 64.
Well, you feel like diving into the game club?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, want to do yours first?
Yeah, so I did Defender of the Crown, and I went with the NES version. I decided not to go through the effort of hooking up my CDI, just to play one game. And Defender of the Crown, it's a basic kind of strategy game. It's once you kind of know the tricks to winning it, it's a 10-minute game roughly. Mm-hmm. Because once you learn, it's like, oh, you got to buy catapults as soon as possible because those are the most powerful weapon, even like in ground combat. Mm-hmm. So you sort of learn, like, kind of get by, barely skim by at the beginning of the game, take over a couple rival castles, then start banking money, and then build up a huge army. And then you can like really mess with the computer towards the end of the game. You can get the computer down to like one space, and then you can go and build castles on every other space. So if you don't know Defender of the Crown, it's like mostly a strategy game. There are some action elements, but it's mostly strategy. Recreating some sort of civil war in British history. Apologies to our British listeners. If you don't know the American Civil War, that's cool with me. And you start by picking one of three dukes or whatever their title is, prince that's challenging for the crown. And they each have different attributes. One's a good sword fighter, one's a good jouster, and one has high leadership. And generally, you win the game based on the battles more than on jousting and swordsmanship. So you're better off picking the strong leadership character. And then there's three other rivals, and you can either win by just knocking out the three rivals, or you can also take out like your two buddies as well, which is what I usually do. I usually take over the whole island. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the path. Jousting you can use to fight over land. So it's got a two-phase thing. First phase is where you're actually trying to do the spear thing. So it's got like this animation of a horse, and you try and spear the other guy off, and then you land on the ground, and you have a whirling star, and you bludgeon each other into unconsciousness, basically. And then the sword fighting is like if you want to raid someone's castle, or if there's like a princess that's been captured. The sword fighting is almost unplayable. It's really, really not. That's really the only bad part of the game. I don't know if I've ever actually beat the sword fighting without using save states.
Really?
Yeah. The mechanics on it are just rough.
Yeah, I because of traveling and stuff, I did not get to play this one, but I watched a playthrough on the DOS version. And this is my kind of game. Like, I am going to play this game very soon.
Okay.
And the person blasted through this game. He knew exactly what to do. He was winning land with jousting. And it seemed like the jousting mechanic was pretty easy.
Yeah, that part is, for sure.
But yeah, definitely my kind of game. The DOS graphics, were pretty good for the time. I want to go back. This was ported for everything, like Macintosh, Apple IIgs, Game Boy Advanced, like you said, CDI. And I'm seeing here there's an iOS and an Android port. So that's it. I'm probably gonna download the Android port. Yeah, the graphics kind of remind me. You know that game Castles?
Yeah, yeah.
Graphics kind of remind me of that.
Yeah, so it being like Cinemaware made a lot of games that were kind of odd, for lack of a better term. They made a lot of kind of weird games, but they always had good visuals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely the case with Defender of the Crown. It's one of the best looking NES games.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I can't wait to actually get into this one. And it looked like there were a few remakes too, but
Yeah, the problem is like I joked on some article about how like the Cinemaware IP gets passed around a lot. And at some point, someone owned Cinemaware and they released like all the Cinemaware back catalog for free. Because they were going to basically make new games branded as Cinemaware.
mm-hmm.
And it didn't work. It bombed. Nobody wanted new Cinemaware games, apparently. So it tanked. And then someone else bought them. And then they took all the games down. So there's a while where you could download all the ROMs, all the disk images, all of it for free. And then now you can't.
Yeah, God, this seems like a strange game to port to NES. I mean, everything was ported to NES. King's Quest V seemed like a strange game to port to that too. But
now I want to say someone did a limited. Yeah, there it is. Over on Atari Age, there's also an official Atari Jaguar port for $70.
Oh wow!
I assume it's based on the Amiga code, right? I mean, it's a 68,000 game, so I'm assuming this is just the Amiga version.
I don't see. I'm on Wikipedia and I don't see Amiga here.
It was one of these like
oh wait,
small little indie releases. Not like it's an official release. It is licensed by whoever happens to own the Cinemaware IP at this time.
And it's on the Amiga CD32.
Oh yeah, of course. So yeah, I expect one day I will be like at a garage sale and I will just see like a box on the ground. In marker, it'll say like Cinemaware IP $5 or best offer.
Yeah.
All right, so you want to talk about some Punch Out?
Yeah, I'm assuming if you listen to this podcast, Punch Out on the NES. I played, every version in the past, but this time through, I played what's on the Switch, which is the post-Mike Tyson version. So, yeah, and I used to own the original Punch-Out cabinet, but it was a nightmare to keep going because it has two monitors, and monitors are the thing on arcade cabinets that like to break. And if you aren't really familiar with that one, it looks totally different. You're the see-through kind of line art character, and
yeah, it looks like Super Punch Out, really.
Yes, almost as good as Super Punch Out, but your opponents are the same as the NES port of Punch Out, and so you play Little Mac in the NES version of Punch Out, and the reason why they did that is they just knew the NES couldn't do what the arcade was doing. And so they just wanted to go in a different direction, which, I mean, really worked out. I think this plays way better than the arcade Punch-Out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they're totally different games, but yeah, it's more responsive. It's just more fun in every way. That's just my opinion.
So just real quick, there was this sort of like weird, I don't know if you went through this too, like you saw Punch Out on the arcade, then you heard it came out for the NES, and you got it, and you were like initially disappointed, but then you realized it was a better game.
Yes. Yeah, disappointment did not last long. And yeah, rumor is that Mike Tyson only got $50,000 to use his likeness for 3 years for this game.
Okay.
And apparently the theme song is Look Sharp, Be Sharp March, from the 1950s. That was used in a Gillette commercial for, I guess that also promoted boxing. And I went on YouTube and listened to it, and it's similar. So I don't know if they actually used that or just based the theme song off it. So yeah, podcast listeners, please, if you feel like doing some research, see if you disagree with me. But yeah, so anyway, your little Mac, you start in, uh I guess the minor leagues. Gosh, I should
Mhm.
know this. But um and you just go up the ranks until you fight Mike Tyson or who is his sprite that I can never get to his sprite swap?
Mr.
Mr.
Dream.
Dream? Yes. And so the reason why I keep forgetting that is because I usually get defeated right after Soda Pop Insky,
Mhm.
if I get past Soda Pop Insky. Um, but the Switch port is just fantastic. I've been doing a lot of rewinding and replaying. When I screw up, just so I could get a little bit further. But I don't think I've ever beat Mr. Sandman. And this year, it's a goal of mine to actually beat Mike Tyson or Mr. Dream.
Mhm.
Uh, I do own this game on cart. Actually, I think I have 2 copies of it. So sometimes, this time I actually did go back and play both just to see if the Switch was, a bit laggy, something like that. But no, it's a great port. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to touch on this. This did come out in the this port did come out in the arcade as well on the it came out on the Play Choice uh, cabinets. But yeah, what's your take on this game?
Yeah, I was sort of curious about like how far you got, right? Because I have beaten like everyone. First of all, everyone's fought Mike Tyson because somehow everybody knew the code to get to Mike Tyson. Don't know how.
Yeah.
It just was all embedded in our brains at some point. Aliens or something gave us the code to Mike Tyson. And playing it straight up, I think I've beaten Sandman twice, not counting save states. And I've never beaten Super Macho Man.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I've definitely
And
never beaten Mike Tyson without heavy save state abuse, without having a controller where save and load were buttons mapped on the controller.
yes. um Oh yeah, and I did use the Switch NES controllers, and yeah, wow, I love those. Uh, Mr. Sandman, I mean, it seems like he's unbeatable, but this time around, what I've been watching on my tablet while I've been traveling is there's a YouTube, I think it's like a 3-parter, a YouTube video of just how to speed run this game and the little tricks to do against every opponent. And I also watched the games done quick blindfold, where he beats the entire game blindfolded. And it's like a magic trick.
Yeah, the speed runs of this are incredible. I mean, when you see people doing like first round TKO on Mike Tyson, I can barely get 2 punches on him in the first round.
Yes. But there's so much to this game. That's what I want to touch on. It's so complex. Every single opponent has a few tricks that you can use on him and vice versa. And uh, little places where you could hit him on a certain frame and he'll just fall down for the count, or get stars, so you could use your super powerful star punch. But I would say this is almost a rhythm game. I mean, if you could do it blindfolded, it's almost a rhythm game.
Yeah.
Super Punch Out, I have not played much. How about you?
Only a little bit. Did not like it as much.
It's a great game, but I do not like it as much as this. I don't think I ever played it in the arcade. I'm pretty sure for Punch Out PC boards, there's a multi-board for it now, so you could get both on there. But I sold mine before that ever came out, if it ever came out. But yeah, that's all I really have to say on that. You could play this on any virtual console. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. One fun project would be we did that episode on NES games that were ported to TurboGrafx by homebrewers. This would be an interesting one to see how it would be different.
Yeah, for sure. Did you mention NES Classic as another way to play this?
Oh, no, I didn't. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Now, of course, that's also the Mr. Dream version.
So's the one on the Switch. I mean, there's no way they're ever putting Mike Tyson back on.
No. I know he's been in other video games since then.
Really? Mm-hmm. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, he's not been in other Nintendo games, of course.
Okay. Well, yeah, I don't have much more to say about this one.
I bet if we called Mike Tyson and offered to do some kind of mobile game, he'd be down for it.
I would be down for that.
Yeah, I bet he doesn't say no to a lot of projects.
Maybe he'll even be a guest on the show.
Yeah, he does not like video games. I know that, though. He wouldn't have much to talk about.
Oh, really?
He has mentioned that he never played... It was something to the effect of, like, he played Mike Tyson's Punch-Out once, couldn't beat the first guy.
I didn't know it was possible to not beat Glass Joe.
Yeah, if you don't know what you're doing. If you gave someone a controller that had never played a video game before, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was out making millions of dollars boxing. Like, he wasn't playing a lot of video games, I guess.
Yeah. Well, should we pick some games for next episode?
Yes. You go first.
All right. So this one, as I've been going through all my carts, this one came up, and I want to play it. So I hope you guys play it with me. Batman on the NES.
Yeah, I'm
not going to say much more about it.
It's a good game. I like this one a lot. And because of Punch-Out and Defender of the Crown, I ended up just thinking of other games I played in that same era. And a game I played right, when I was done getting rage quitting at Punch-Out, I would put in a nice relaxing game like Stinger for the NES, also called Moro Twinbee in Japan. I call that out because there are multiple games called Stinger in the world, and I'm clarifying I'm talking about the NES one that was also one of the Twinbee games in Japan.
And I think this is on Switch's online service.
I believe it is. And even though it's a shooter, it's a very kind of stress-free shooter. This is not a bullet hell shooter game.
Yeah, almost a cute 'em up.
Yeah, because it's on an on-rail shooter, I went and looked at speed runs out of curiosity, and the top 10 speed runs are all within 1 second of each other because there's really no strategy. The game just plays
because it's scrolling.
Time. Yeah, it's just
yeah. That's funny.
It's who can hit the start button fastest, really.
And if any of you play those games, please email at retrogameclub.net. Any games we've ever played, or if you want to talk about or recommend games for us, please email us. And we do have some emails here. Yeah. Jason writes in, and he bought Defender of the Crown on NES near the end of middle school in the late 80s and got pretty frustrated with it. He thought he was going to get an Ultima Exodus type game, and played it on and off through high school, and a really smart kid in his high school gave him directions on notebook paper on how to finish the game, and then it looks like years later he finally kind of went back through and found them and is making his way through it, but he's always wanted to try the original PC version. And thank you, Jason, for that email. Yeah, I still need to play it. And I think it was because of reading this email that I went and watched the DOS version of this. Thinking oh yeah, the NES version might be a little weird.
Yeah, and he brings up a good point about this game, where there's this kind of weird reverse thing where the game actually gets easier the longer you play it. So the further you are, the closer you are to winning the game, the easier it gets.
Because you get more and more soldiers, right?
Right. As you control more land, because the amount of money that you can spend is based on the amount of territory you control. So if you have like 3/4 of the map, like that means you are spending 3 times as much as your opponent who has 1/4 of the map.
It's kind of like real life.
It's a lot like real life wars, I suppose. Majors writes in, talks a little bit about limited run games, and that he'd read that their business model was kind of geared towards always selling out so that they avoid holding inventory, which of course, I mean, that makes sense being that they're a very small company. And I guess he doesn't really mind because basically every game they sell is already available digitally or will be available digitally in most cases. Which is true. But a lot of what they're doing, I think their business is kind of geared on like, here's a game that was only a download. Like, at least that's how they started, right? Like, here are games that are download only, and now we're going to let you buy a physical copy if you want. PC ports to console. So yes, he says he had a PC and also had a console. So we'd usually play the PC version and not bother with the port. And then he remembers some of the SSI games that were ported over being kind of clunky, like Order of the Griffin and Buck Rogers. And I think Order of the Griffin, I might be mistaken, but I think that was an original game, but it was based on the Gold Box D&D game engine. So it was very, very, very similar to the Gold Box D&D games, but I don't recall if there was a PC version of it. I did write a save state hacking utility for Order of the Griffin because I got frustrated with it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a very hard game. It has like a level cap, so you can't even like grind your way to victory in it. Yeah, brutal. So yeah, I wrote a ROM editor just so like I could heal my characters without having to camp. Because in these D&D games, sometimes you would camp and then you get attacked while you were camping. So what's the point? And then just to give them better weapons too. I wrote it in Visual Basic 6 in like 2 hours. All right. Web ads. Something about web ads.
I think I was complaining about them last week.
You were complaining about web ads? I have Pi-hole installed. I never see web ads. Xevious Arcade. If you haven't seen an original Xevious Arcade cabinet, it's quite a unique beast. It has a top shroud that immerses the player, along with helping to keep the audio directed right at you. And yes, Xevious Arcade is a very cool cabinet. I've not seen one in person in a while. Happy that we mentioned Uncle Buck when we were talking about John Hughes films. I don't know if I've seen Uncle Buck. I think I did.
It's not bad. Yeah, it's not bad. John Candy.
Yeah, I probably saw it, but it's not one I've seen more than once, so it's not sticking in my memory. But all the John Hughes, I don't know if he ever made a really bad film.
I don't think so.
So let's see. Punch-Out. Great game. So there you go. Anytime he runs into an NES Mini, he'll play a few rounds. And he never owns it, but all of his friends did, so he played it a ton. He's never played Defender of the Crown, but he is familiar with it. He says it seems to be remembered fondly by kids that grew up with PCs in the 80s. And there is a port to it, and I think this is an unofficial port, to Intellivision.
Oh, wow.
I think I knew about that. I don't recall if it's licensed or not. Well, no, it says right here in the video. He has a link to a video. It says, exclusively licensed by Cinemaware Retro to Electronite. Sorry. Apologies. And actually, the Intellivision sword fighting looks better than the NES sword fighting.
Even in DOS, it looked pretty not great. It was the only part that didn't look good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is.
It reminded me of which Nintendo game is that where you barely move your sword?
Highlight?
No. Is it?
So isn't it?
You're a knight guy. You're dressed up like a knight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it has like a Fabio type box art. Oh man.
Fabio box art. Okay, so Wizards and Warriors?
I think so, yes.
Because Fabio, I think, is on the box art for Wizards and Warriors 2.
Let's see. Yes, Wizards and Warriors, where you barely move.
Yes, Wizards and Warriors is fun though. Have you actually played Wizards and Warriors?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah, I've beaten it.
Okay.
It's a good game. It's a frustrating game.
It is frustrating. I agree. Like, the controls are kind of goofy, but it's an awesome soundtrack. It's a funny idea.
Once you get the mechanics down,
Yeah, it's not so bad.
But the look of how he just touches people with his sword, that's what Defender of the Crown sword fighting looked like to me.
Yeah, no, I wish. You will wish you could just touch the guy with your sword and they would die.
Adam writes in, he played some Galaxian after listening to the last episode. He thought it was a great pick by Arabian Prince, and he had fun listening to that interview. His favorite way to play Galaxian is on the Bally Astrocade, and it's called Galactic Invasion. And the sounds on the Astrocade were just much better than the other systems at the time. He also likes the unique controller on the Astrocade.
The Astrocade has an awesome controller. It really does.
Yeah, I need to pick one of those up. That's one of the systems I don't have. But again, I didn't have one growing up, so not much nostalgia for it. But it is a really cool system.
Yeah, I don't own one, and I just refuse to emulate it because the controller's the best part of that system.
Yeah. And another great way, he says, to play Galaxian is a homebrew called Galagon on the 2600. It's almost identical to the original arcade game Galaga. Galagon also allows you to play 2 players simultaneously, which adds a lot of fun to an already spectacular game. I'll have to check that out. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, I gotta look at that one.
We got some social media feedback. I'm going to kind of lightning round some of these, if that's all right.
Absolutely, yes. And thank you for Zach for curating these. We don't pick these. Zach does, so don't at me.
Yeah. And you can't at me. I literally have no social media accounts. All right. Feedback on upcoming game Punch-Out. See, a lot of people saying they spent a lot of time on it. I always thought, Henry says he thought Soda Popinski was the hardest to beat. He took a decade-long break from playing it and had to watch YouTube before learning how to beat him again. Yes. And then he got some kind of anti-vax video next, I'm sure. All right, that's why I hate YouTube. They're like recommendation engine. Needs some work. And someone else, like me, couldn't get past Super Macho Man. He doesn't know it's actually possible to beat the game. Yeah. Oh, it is. I mean, the speedrunners do it without cheating somehow. You have to be... I guess it is like a rhythm game. I mean, I guess if you can do Dragon Force on Guitar Hero. Is that a thing on Guitar Hero?
I think so, okay. Yes.
If you can play a Dragon Force song on Guitar Hero, then you can probably handle Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
And it's also choosing to play a game for long enough to get good at it. Now in 2020, we have so many games, and I think we tend to hop games quicker, And back then, I didn't have much money at all, so if I bought a game, even if it wasn't great, I played it till I was good at it,
Yeah, but that did not work for me in Punch-Out.
We had some feedback on first video game purchases with your own money.
Yeah.
And Robert writes in saying it had to be a 2600 game, probably River Raid or Yar's Revenge.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph writes in with Blades of Steel, a great game, probably from a flea market. Nick Spy Hunter for the ZX Spectrum. Nick, I'm going to guess that you're from the UK? This is a joke.
Yeah, we never got the ZX Spectrum in the US, which is also why we don't pronounce it correctly.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's see.
I don't think it was actually available here.
No,
right?
I don't believe it was possible to buy it in the US.
Yeah.
Unless you were very, very motivated. Like, you could technically buy an Amiga CD32 in the US.
Mm-hmm.
It was technically sold here. There was, in Buffalo Grove, Illinois, of all places, there was an Amiga store well into the second half of the 90s. Mm-hmm. Like a literal Amiga store. It wasn't owned by Amiga. Like, it wasn't, Amiga-owned store. It was just a dude who opened an Amiga store. And he had the CD. That's the only time I've ever seen a CD32 was at the Amiga store. And I was going to buy, I don't know, I had an Amiga. I don't know what I was going there to buy. Something Amiga related.
Yeah, I know the guys from the Retro are big fans of that, big collectors of
Yeah.
Amiga CD32.
So there's, yeah, and then not too far from the Amiga store was the Die Hard Game Fan store. You remember Die Hard Game Fan magazine?
No, I don't.
Well, there's a magazine in the 90s called Die Hard Game Fan. And it was sold in stores. I mean, that's how I knew about it. And they did a lot of talk about like import games. They always had like an import section. And then they ran a store called Die Hard Game Fan Store that was an import video game shop in the 90s.
Huh.
It was very small. I mean, picture... I can't really think of a store to... It was almost like the size of a mall kiosk, but it was in a strip mall.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a tiny store. There's barely like you and like the dude working there. And then just wall to wall like
really
import
strange.
games. Yeah. It did not last
No,
long.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah. I think they only had something like 4 or 5 locations.
Huh. No. Never made it to Detroit.
If you have been to Die Hard Game Fan in Buffalo Grove, Illinois, definitely write email at retrogameclub.net. A few other first purchases with their own money. Total Recall for the NES, or possibly Fight Night, for Atari 7800 at the dollar store.
Now, that means he had an NES. This is Peter that wrote this. That means Peter had an NES and an Atari 7800 while he was growing up. That's a rare thing.
No, because the
Not many
7800
people
went
have
on clearance, and I bet a lot of people picked them up when they were on clearance.
They just seemed like rivals, like either bought one or the other. You know, it's not a money thing. It's like either like Atari or Nintendo, you know. But
Yeah, I don't know. I bet there were a lot of, like parents or grandparents who, went and did some Christmas shopping and saw like new Atari for, a couple pennies on the dollar. Because that 7800 went really, really cheap. I mean, he mentions buying games at the dollar store. I bought 7800 games at the dollar store. Right? It just, that thing went so cheap when they discontinued it that I'm sure a lot of people had both.
yeah, that probably makes sense. And I remember Total Recall being good, but I don't know if it actually is. I'll have to go back to that one.
All right. Let's see. Jam It for Super Nintendo. Someone bought. Probably mistaking it for NBA Jam. Rockstar Eat My Hamster for the Spectrum, which I have not heard. I kind of want to try that now.
Yes, I kind of need to try that.
I love these stories. Joe bought Street Fighter 2 with various odd job money before he even owned a Super Nintendo, and looked at the box and read the manual for weeks until he then earned enough money to also buy the Super Nintendo. That is something, man. Maybe did he have like a friend that he could bring the cartridge over to at least?
Yeah, we need to know more.
Yeah. So this also went to W.H. Smith. Maybe that's Sears. I don't know. And bought a bunch of $1.99, or I say, I'll just go $1, whatever. $2 and $3 Spectrum games, and then upgraded to the Amstrad CPC. Killer Instinct, 2600 Missile Command, another Street Fighter 2. Berserk, Speed Buggy, Vice City, Combat Tribes. There's a lot of games here. More Killer Instinct. A lot of people bought Killer Instinct as their first game. A game that I didn't know existed, Moonwalker on the ZX Spectrum.
Oh, we need to see that.
Is that, do you think, the same Moonwalker?
Yeah, Tommy wrote in that one. That's got to be US Gold, right?
Yeah, that's Michael Jackson, all right. Look at that.
Did US Gold do that one?
Yeah,
Please make my guess correct.
And the last two here, Excite Bike and River Raid. And then a couple other little notes here. Adam wrote us about the Android port of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, saying he got it free on the Xbox a while back and did not enjoy it. But then tried it again and now really liked it. And just was coming. It's an extremely long game. Someone mentions, Michael mentions the Dreamcast zip drive.
What?
Is that a thing? I've never heard of that.
Well, you could install Linux on the on Dreamcast.
Yeah,
so
look at I've definitely learned something new from one of our listeners here. Besides Moonwalker existing on the ZX Spectrum. This is an unreleased add-on for the Dreamcast, allowing data to be saved on zip disks.
And it looks like a Dreamcast. Like, it has the N64 DD type look to it.
Yeah, that's a lot of save games, man. 100 meg is a lot of save games for $19.99. Yes, and then a few people liked the Dated Discman article, which I'm glad someone read it.
And we got a really nice compliment from Twitter from Dan Gellis. So thank you so much for mentioning us on Twitter. If you want to follow us on Twitter, it's RGC Podcast at RGC Podcast. If you want to follow us on Facebook, you can skip all the political stuff and just go to facebook.retrogameclub.net.
Mm-hmm.
And
we only talk about coronavirus if it directly impacts something retro game related.
Yes. And like we keep saying, email at retrogameclub and or .net. Email at retrogameclub.net. And if you could, please give us some stars on wherever you listen to our podcast. We have hit a pretty good threshold on listenership. We got a big jump. Recently on listenership, and I think I'm going to start unleashing my favorite games on Game Club. So I hope you will all play those with us, because that's why we're here to. It's an excuse for me, really, to talk about retro games.
Really disjointed episodes like this will hopefully get us back to a nice, manageable level. So apparently, the Dreamcast zip drive, one of them showed up on eBay once. It sold. Is someone in Germany. They sold it for 4,225 euros. And looking at the pictures, it looks pretty real, so don't know where they got this thing.
Wow.
It has an orange disc that says Dreamcast on it.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah, there's a Wired article about this thing from 2007.
Yeah, this is now my dream possession.
It's your unicorn?
Yeah, I almost would rather have this than the Nintendo PlayStation prototype.
So he auctioned it in 2007 for $10,000.
Yeah, it had to come down. Like, we didn't talk about the news because I felt kind of bad for the guy, even though he got a bunch of money. But the Nintendo PlayStation prototype was sold, right? Mm-hmm. And I guess someone had said that a private bidder, someone privately had contacted him and offered 1.2 million for the system, and he said, "Nah, I'm gonna take it to auction." And then auction, he got 360,000.
And it was the guy that offered him the money.
It had to have been, right? All right, so we're way off topic. So that's it. Again, email at retrogameclub.net if you want to talk about any of these upcoming games. And thanks for listening.
Thank you.